All right, everybody. Hey, it is Friday. Today is the last Friday for 20 Minutes with Bridgette. It will no longer be Monday through Friday. It's going to be Tuesday and Thursday of every week. And as usual, I have a blog. Today, I promised that it would be on carpal tunnel or tunnel syndromes. And we're going to go over that. And not in the pain management way, but maybe like so people will better understand it. And later on, down the road, I'm going to be integrating some stuff as soon as I have, I figure it all out. And because I'm dealing with limited space and stuff like that, and I don't have a studio or an office. So I'm going to try to work on incorporating videos that I can put on my YouTube channel, that I can put on my blog, that will show ways to manage your pain and help your pain, and open up certain kinds of areas in your body. And that's going to be down the road as soon as I get that done, 'cause there's a lot to get done. Okay, so like usual, so today's 20 Minutes with Bridgette. Today is May 1st, 2020. I'm Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff, and yeah, I am pretty excited. My other, advertising photo wasn't so good, so I went back and did another one yesterday, and this one's just beautiful for 20 Minutes with Bridgette. Love it. And what else? So as usual, I have a blog. You can go to my website, coe-llc.com. I also have a shaman blog, my ministry of consciousness, nevada.org. And I'm going to be updating the ministry website. It really needs it. I have a few websites that really need some upgrading. So hopefully that's going to be happening here in the next couple weeks. And just trying to think about what else. Yeah, so, okay, we're going to go to the blog that I did for today. And today's title, oops, I don't know where it's at. Oh, here. Let me get in here. Let me see if I can get, oh, here we go. Okay, hopefully you'll be able to see that. Awesome. Okay, see how cute it is? Oh, it's so cute. All right, so 20 Minutes with Bridgette, May 1st, 2020, carpal tunnel. And the only reason it's a carpal tunnel is because of the carpal bones in the hands. And this is kind of like the most famous phrase. Everybody has carpal tunnel, though nobody knows why. They don't know what it is, and then they allow people to do surgery on them, which is like so unbelievably ridiculous, because it will get rid of the pain, but it's going to completely destroy those areas. Okay, so, and my cute new little my little photo advertising, and yeah, so anyway, okay, anyway, donations are really, would be great. Okay, so carpal tunnel has to do with, when you get into here, here's the carpal bone, right? And what happens is a lot of this stuff in here gets tight and tension. Now, specifically here in your arm bone, you have two bones, right? Two bones. And because you do a lot of stuff with your elbow and your hand, I mean your lower part of your hand, thumbs go in directions, fingers going in directions, wrist, all these different little bones in your hands are articulating. What happens is that if there's too much tension here in the lower part of the arm, or something goes haywire, or you get a lot of scar tissue, one bone can be held up, or both bones can be held up. So a lot of things that can hold them up, right? You got a fascia, which is kind of like when you're looking at a chicken and you take the skin off and there's that other weird clear tight stuff that's on the chicken. That's fascia. You have that all over all your muscle tissue. So the fascia can get twisted up onto the tissue, the meat, and that can torque, right? Depending, you have just so many intricate parts, right? And doing all kinds of pushing and pulling and stretching and working and, you know, whatever else that you're doing. And nobody's ever really taught you to actually take care of your structure and take care of your tissues. So you overuse them and they get twisted and turned, and they go in all kinds of different directions, and it twists and turns the inner workings of the system. So, you know, you have tendons and ligaments, and they can get caught up wrong. Also, when the tunneling happens, it means there's a shortening in here, puts tension on. So you can have numbing, you can have weird tingling, you can have sharp pains, you can have lack of strength. You can have just a whole neuropathy, you know, like a whole host of things, because these two bones here coming in are pinched or twisted up higher. So that is going to shorten, tunnel this area, which is going to put pressure on here and cause all kinds of problems coming down, right? So that is going on. Also, you have lymphatic, you know, lymphatics that run through between the two bones. And if those get congested, most people don't realize, like, your lymphatic system is a hydraulic pump, but it's the only one in the body that's a manual pump. So you actually have to move your feet every day. You have to do 20 minutes of brisk walking to pump using your feet back and forth, or you can get one of those little trampolines and jump on that for 20 minutes. But this movement is, or jumping, is what moves your lymphatic system to drain. How do you know your lymphatic system's draining? Because you'll get like a fog, like a white foggy pee. Then you know that your lymphatic system is draining. If you never get any like white foggy pee, that's a pretty good indication that your lymphatic system is clogged and needs to be cleaned out. Well, sometimes you can get knots, but they're clogged lymph nodes because they're full of stuff. And they get all kinds of stuff in them, right? So they get lumpy. They can actually pull on the rest of the tissues because they're enlarged, which can also be pulling and twisting all of the stuff going on in these two bones, okay? Now, you got the same thing going on in the foot and ankle and lower leg, right? But it's going to be meta instead of carpal. You know, hand is the carpal, metacarpal is the foot. So I think I'm right on that. I get confused on some of the stuff. I've been doing it for so long. I hate some of the terms. Like, I just tell my clients, like, point in the area. Because you know what, it just doesn't pay to outsmart my clients or have all. I learned a long time ago, the more certifications I had on the wall in my office, the less likely people were going to come back and see me, because it was intimidation. And the reason they were coming to see me was to get a different opinion from their doctor. And I think those certifications really threw them into a psychological kind of, you know, stress, emotional stress. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so carpal tunnel is a narrowing passageway. Oops, excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry about that. Still dealing with those allergies. Everything's flowering, which I'm glad. Okay. Carpal tunnel, which is in the hand, is a narrowing passageway surrounded by the bones and ligaments on the palm side of your hand. When the meridian is compressed, the symptoms can include numbness, tingling, weakness in hand and arm, right? Fatigue, tension. But, you know, I love how, you know, medical that they put this stuff. Like, it's just in your hand, right? When the nerve, when the meridian nerve that's coming through is compressed on the palm side of your hand, you can have carpal tunnel. So they don't talk about how the carpal tunnel actually is starting up in your shoulder blade, right? And then it's working its way down, and then it twists the two lower bones because it's throwing all of the joints off. So it's a symptom of another point in the body that also needs to be released, right? And you can release this stuff super easy. It may take some time, but professionals like me, like in osteopathic medicine, I'm a traditional osteopath, so I do everything hands-on. It's not a big deal. I can fix just about anything. Okay, so just want to bring it to people's attention that any place where you have nerves going through areas, which is your whole body, and you have a joint, right? You have a place where it's articulating, it's moving. So it could be an elbow, it could be also the base of your skull, which I forgot to put in here, but this includes, so this is the part that I wrote. This includes any place that there's a type of joint. So you can have this tunnel syndrome in all of these other places, right? These are the places you can also have this tunnel syndrome. It's not just your arms, and we're gonna talk about that as well. This includes any place that there is a type of joint where the bones can articulate, move around. Jaw, hips, like I said, the base of the skull, ankle, knee, shoulder, elbow, vertebrae, fingers, toes, hands, feet, sacrum, ribs. And, you know, I'm going to throw this in there. The medical profession like to separate things so that they can specialize in a knee or a lower back or whatever they're pushing. So they like to actually take out of the whole frame and only deal with that one little issue, which means let's, you know, inject it, or let's do a surgery on it, or let's cut in there and see what's going on, instead of actually going to the larger group of muscles that lead into those areas, the limbs, and fix those by using pressure points, getting in there with an elbow, properly aligning those things, right? Getting people, well, on proper nutrition actually to help that stuff, you know, help them to release all their stuff. Unlike other people, naturopaths, we deal with everything that is wrong with you, because, you know, what may be going on with you physically could go back to your childhood as an emotional incident that happened to you. Okay, so we bring in the totality. And DOs in America mostly do surgery. They've turned on their profession. Traditional osteopath, that's what I am. I've studied with old school people who did traditional osteopathic work. They were non-medical professionals, non-MDs. So this stuff goes far and wide. And though chiropractic people like to get really tinkered off, chiropractic was a branch of osteopath work. So yeah, osteopath, I consider us the top of the food chain as far as health, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and fixing, you know, the body. We take you back through your timeline, all the way back to your birth trauma, and we clean it all up, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And so a lot of people don't really understand the kind of work that we do. And it's intense work. You have to have a huge, broad education and training and experience. I've been at it almost 30 years now, actually, probably longer. Haven't been practicing for 30 years, maybe like 28 years, but been involved with it pretty much all my life, coming from, you know, women who were healers and medicine people. Okay, let's go back to carpal means the area of the bone which is in the hand. You have tunnel problems in a host of areas I mentioned, where there are joints or moving parts. Other terms that may be used in regard to these areas of issue, which are symptoms of tension that need to be released in the body, and this can be done by a professional like myself. Other languages used by the medical professional for the same thing, tunnel symptoms, tunnel issues, whatever you want to call them, which is what it's a narrow passaging. It's like, so your body is constricting those joint passages. There's pressure on them, tension and pressure, and they can't work properly. Okay, so other languages used: TMJ, sciatica, neuropathy, and more. So there's a huge long list. And they, they like to separate out these things too, right? I'm going to tell you a story about a doctor that I used to go to who, he had probably been licensed at one point in every state. He practiced medicine for 50 years, for the last, 20 years, completely alternative and out of the box. And he was telling me, I went to him a couple times just when I was finishing healing my brain cancer, and he did dark field hematology blood work. And so he would go lower than the cell, kind of to the microbe, to actually solve and resolve the symptoms that I was having. And he told me this crazy story about, and I totally believe it as an osteopath, because this is the kind of stuff I see all the time. Once I, get to the root of the problem, I start releasing all the parts in the body. And then I get to a point where I can release, the main issue. He used to do it with injections, procaine injections, and I don't use any of that stuff. I'll use some acupuncture and stuff like that, but I refuse to inject anything into the body. I'm an advocate for no injections at all, period, end of story. I don't even really care what they are. They're damaging to the body, and you should never put a substance in the body ever. So he was telling me that he had this patient who had type 2 diabetes, and they used all kinds of stuff to treat him. So what they would do is they'd read your blood, they'd see what the layers of issues are, then they would take you to the room and work on you, and then give you some injections, procaine injections, to release the tension, the muscle tension in that area, or damage, or brokenness, or whatever else, injury, sprain. Things can last a really long time that are not healed. And then you compound these things. Just because the symptom goes away doesn't mean that the tissue and the bone and everything else, or the meridians, or the lymph nodes, or the fascia, or the tissues have actually been restored. So they're going to cause layers of other things to happen. It's like a spiraling effect. And sometimes you have to get into that body, and you have to unravel one thing at a time in order to fix it, right? That's what I do. Sometimes it's like, it would be so much better to have a puzzle where I could take the piece and figure out where it goes and put it in there. But I have to take a whole body that's already connected and unravel it to get it to open up and sort itself out. And that is a talent and a skill. All right. So anyway, so this doctor that I was going to was telling me the story about, he did some procaine injections. He started to look around at the guy's body, trying to see if there was any visual things off on it. Number one thing I always look at is the feet, because the feet are a massive indication to what systems are working and what systems are not working. And people damage the crud out of their feet. And he had this weird toe, like his small toe on the right side, like it was like kind of funky, and it was like all weird. And so he said, well, what's that? And the guy said, oh yeah, I was wearing thongs or whatever else, and my toe caught on something, and it like broke the whole thing, and it was kind of hanging, and I had to go have it kind of sewn back on, and it's just never been the same. And so my doctor that I was going to, who was just unbelievable, he said, oh well, we got to fix that. So we got in there and did some procaine injections around it to release the tissue. And he had to go after it about 4 times. So then he would wait an hour, and then he'd watch the toe release until the toe kind of like got back to the direction that it was supposed to be in. And it looked, fairly normal. So then they took his blood again. They went and looked under the dark field microscope, and that the type 2 diabetes was gone. And after that, the guy had no symptoms of type 2 diabetes. So structure is everything. And anytime there's narrowing, there's pain, there's any of this stuff, it's leading to a greater symptom, right? So just because you go in and you have things cut, so you don't have pain, doesn't mean that you're not moving towards something else spiraling out of control. It doesn't fix it. Okay. You can see the early warnings of the long-term tunnel issues with sprains, lower leg hairline fractures, and dislocations, lower arm hairline fractures and dislocations, numbing, unstoppable pain, nerve pain, tension headaches, and other locations in the body. So interesting story. I had a friend of mine whose hips were out forever. You could tell like how they walked, you know, majorly one leg shorter than the other. And he had so much, when you touch his calves, like his calves had so much tension in them. And one leg, he like sprained the ankle like over and over and over again. And he couldn't figure out why he sprained it over and over and over again. And on some levels, sometimes I think the body is trying to actually release itself, especially when you have, I can't think. Anyway, when you have muscle cramping, especially in your legs, you know, what we do is we tighten up and we're like, oh, and what we need to do is breathe through it and allow that area to actually work out that spasm until it's done, because it's going to, it's trying to lengthen itself, like the lungs trying to open up and cough, or sneezing, you know, to the body, to tissues and tendons and ligaments, spasms are, you know, your body trying to release those areas. So anyway, so he eventually, you know, wouldn't get worked on, wouldn't get any help. And I remember one day he stepped off a curb onto the pavement from that one leg, and he totally fractured both of the small bones on his leg so badly that he had to have like major surgery. For like, he had to probably have, I think he had like 3 surgeries on it. It took a long time to fix and heal. So what happened was the tissue and everything was so off and out of alignment that it only took a small thing to break it. And that's what happened, right? Had nothing to do with what was going on outside of him, had everything to do with what was going on inside of his body in that particular leg. All right, so the ideal position of joints are what I call the stacked joints. So for example, I have some bending, I have bowing. Like if you looked at my arm, if you put your arms out, you're gonna see your bowing. If you take your arms, okay, roll your shoulders back and then put your arms on your sides. Most people can't do it. They might be able to get their upper arm to their elbow down, but the lower arm kind of waves out. And that's because you got a boomerang arm. And then you see people with these boomerang legs. And your joints are no longer stacked. And I climbed a lot. So I used a lot of upper arm and bicep. And so it actually forced my limbs to kind of grow that way. And over time, I'm getting it back. Yoga is really helpful and things of that nature, Pilates. But it takes time to get the tissues released and get the bones to stack. So if you ever looked at a kid that's really healthy, say like around 7 or 8, everything's straight and long and their bones are stacked. All their joints are stacked. Their legs look perfect, perfectly straight. All the joints are stacked. And then also their arms, if you look at their little arms, they're all straight. And you can see how the arm and the elbow and all the way down to the wrist and the hand, it's all straight. So we have to go back to getting our joints to stack and not be misaligned or deformed, because that's what we are. I see it a lot in a lot of people who are professional athletes. At one point in time, I had a professional client. I've had a lot of professional athlete clients, but one in particular who was a pitcher and actually wasn't getting the structural work that he needed because they were kind of cheaping out and they needed him to play. And he ended up throwing a pitch and tearing his ACL at the same time, and never was able to get his ACL repaired because they needed him to fix up pretty fast and get back on the mound. And I saw him 10 years after he was retired because he was so damaged he couldn't actually pull his game back together. And having to work on him, getting him sorted out, and all of that other stuff sorted out, which could have been worked on, but because of the overusage, any kind of, yep. So anyway, let's, Over time, because of tissues mentioned below, the limbs start to bow as the collapse of the skeleton structure happens and tissues tighten in the areas of the torso. So the torso has a lot to do with what's going to happen to the outside limbs. You know, if you're going to have narrowing, if you're going to have, you know, tension starts in the torso. The main collapse starts to happen in the torso. The torso is also where we lose our spiritual power and where we lose energy to drive us forward. So as it collapses, and you see this in people where they start to look like a square or a drum, where they get really, really wide, but their limbs are still pretty small and their head's pretty small. And then they lose their neck because their neck shrinks right into their trunk, their torso as well. That's like full collapse. So if we come over here, this is where they're at. They're in 60% loss of function. Yeah. So, and in order to have pain and disease, you got to be at 70% loss of function. So, yeah. So this is what I do. I make everyone better. Okay. But, you know, I'm a dying breed, and a lot of people would rather go to a doctor and being injected and surgery and all that, which is sad. But you know what? That's your choice. That is your choice. Okay. Let's see if I can finish this up. Sorry, it's another long one. All right, so I put some stuff in here. I put some information in here, just, you know, some pictures, but we'll just finish it up. What can cause tunnel issues, right? Pain, numbing, weakness, narrowing, you know, all these different kinds of things. There are a lot of things that actually can cause them. And then you can have multiple things happening simultaneously because, you know, you have to be 70% loss of function for disease and pain. So that means you're only 30% functioning. You're barely functioning, right? Because then you have loss of function, which is total collapse of all systems. Okay, what can cause tunnel issues? Heavy metal poisoning causes serious tension on the body because the organs are distressed. They're getting ready to shut down. And a lot of people have heavy metal exposure. I mean, kidney failures like at all-time high than it's ever been. You can even go to resorts on cruises and get dialysis. That's how severe kidney failure is. Kidney failure is affected by heavy metals. We have a lot of chemtrail spraying. That's pure heavy metals, folks. Toxicity. We have toxicity from so many things, from virus, parasites, what's in our food, antibiotics. I mean, we have huge amounts of toxicity in our diets and our body. And like things like Wi-Fi, you know, microwave radiation is also part of that toxicity because it stays in the body and it accumulates, right? That's toxicity, things that stay in the body and that they accumulate. What else causes tunnel issues? Stress, tension, not sleeping, hormone imbalances, environment, especially like noise environments, your job, working out, nutritional deficiencies, past trauma, birth, your birth, or you birthing somebody, brain lateralization, injury, accidents, genetics, types of viruses you were born with, infections, clogged lymph nodes, non-pliable tissues, structural misalignment, abuse, even mild, and more. So there are a lot of reasons why you could have pain in your joints. So anyway, I just want to put it all together because it's very rarely actually put together, and it's probably one of the most serious symptoms that we have to that we're going down the slide down into more catastrophic health problems, and that, you know, they're not dealt with appropriately. Okay, anybody? But anyway, this is Bridgette Dolgoff, and it was like 36 minutes with Bridgette today instead of 20. I'm Bridgette Dolgoff. Have a great day. We'll see you. We're going to see you on Tuesday because I'm not going to be doing it on Monday. We're just going to be doing it on Tuesdays and Thursdays starting next week. All right, everybody. Have a great day.